Welcome to the G3X Podcast, where it's all godgymgrind unfiltered. This is episode 24 of the podcast. Super excited. Today, my special guest is Daniel. Thank you so much for being here, Daniel. How you feeling today, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to have this platform and share what we do.
Definitely no, super excited to have you. For the audience listening, I virtually met Daniel through Jack, who was actually a prior guest on our podcast. I forgot the exact number he was on, but Jack Mumford, he introduced me to Daniel. How he told me Daniel he's the founder of an amazing program helping youths find their identity and purpose in life. It's actually super cool. So I'm like, hey, we definitely need to share that story for others to be more aware about it. But Daniel, let me not steal your thunder. For the audience who isn't aware of you, give yourself a little brief introduction, who you are, where you're from, what you do, and we take it from there, man.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Jack for putting this together. That's my guy. He actually like low key like saved my life when I was in Arizona, and after I left my basketball academy, I didn't have anywhere to live, and he kind of took me in for a couple months. So shout out to Jack.
That's awesome. There you go. I
Yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
that. That's so cool.
Yeah, but a little bit about me. I was born in Puerto Rico. I lived there up until fifth grade. Then my mom got a job in Rhode Island. I moved to Rhode Island. Was an athlete most of my life, and then after that, once I got into college, I got really passionate about self awareness and mental health and self discovery, and that's kind of what kind of got me on this journey.
Love it. That's beautiful. No, and like I said, when I was seeing the form that you filled out and all the information, it was like, wow, that's actually super cool because nothing better, I would say, in life than be able to help others and see the people you help become better, grow into something they never saw themselves becoming and so forth. So I think it's beautiful. But let me talk about, I know the name, correct me if I'm wrong, the name of the program being Find Your Mission. So talk to me exactly what is Find Your Mission and what inspired you to in a sense, create that while you were still in college from what I recall on the form.
Yeah. So, Find Your Mission is a program I developed, and it's to help young people gain clarity and career direction. And what it is, it's a self discovery program that helps young adults, high school and college students understand who they are, what are their skills, why they're here, what is their purpose, and then where are they going, what's the best case scenario, or what's the North Star in their life. What kind of got me started into this program and Find Your Mission. I always tell people I won the lottery at birth because I grew up with a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
And usually as when I was a young kid, I would go to my mom and I would say when I would be upset, I'd go to her about my problems. I'd be like, "Okay, what do you think? What should I do?" And she actually never gave me the answer. She simply just asked me to go within myself and say, "Danny, how does it make you feel? Why does it make you feel that way? What can you learn and what can you do about it?" So this kind of set me on a platform since early on to go within and become my own mentor and really seek answers within myself. And because of this, because I had an environment growing up that allowed me to be a critical thinker, I was able to grow in my self-awareness. And I noticed how being self-aware, like having this self-understanding, really improves your quality of life. And as I went on to middle school and high school, I noticed that a lot of my peers lacked this. Like, didn't necessarily know what they wanted to do, or didn't really have that self confidence, or kind of had that North Star in their life that allows people to move forward. And I just kind of become fascinated with this. I was like, why? Why don't you know that? Why don't you know your purpose, or why don't you know how have an understanding of who you are and what you want? And since then, I've gone on to just interview everyone. Like like every conversation I have, it's like a deep conversation. And for those of you who know me personally, it's never like a normal or basic conversation with me. I have like this my memory works in a way where I don't remember your name, but I remember your face and I remember everything we talked about. And I just started to learn more and more about the collective consciousness and what makes a purpose and how to find it. And after these hundreds of conversations, really, and seeing all these patterns emerge, I was able to facilitate and create a program that creates that environment that was created for me. And that's just kind of a little bit about it, that how it started. I'm sure we'll go into it more, but that's just like a basic startup.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Yeah, no, because as I was hearing you're explaining that, I was like, hey, I would assume then, given the fact, as you said, you hit the lottery with being born with a psychologist there. So correct me if I'm wrong. Was it your mom or dad who was a psychologist, or Like, just to
So
better
my
understand that.
yeah. So my mom is a psychologist,
Oh,
and
nice.
my dad what is now a academic professor. He was a pastor, so I had a upbringing of spirituality and psychology, and that's kind of like
Nice.
the mix that we have at the D&D network, and try to bring forth that find your mission.
That's so cool. That's so cool. My sister actually studies psychology too, actually. So that's super cool that you mentioned that. Actually, nice.
That's good.
And so I would assume also as well then as you were growing up with like your friends, like you were saying, like you noticed how they weren't aware of it. What at what stage was it more obvious than not? Because I'm assuming maybe like starting middle school and everything, you notice it, but maybe it's not that obvious in a sense. But when did it start becoming more obvious to you? Like, hey, you know what? There's really is this lack of purpose within the youth, and where exactly did it start being? I guess you could say becoming more obvious for you on that regards.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say that when it sparked, when it kind of really hit me was after high school. So I always had this background of self-awareness, but like I was an athlete my entire life. I ran cross country, I did track, I was the captain of my track team, captain of soccer team, and I played basketball. Basketball was my main sport. And all throughout my life, I dedicated my life to sports. And like it's the thing I lived, I breathed for it, and it's the thing I thought I was gonna my goal was to, play college basketball and like Hooper dreams, right? Everyone has everyone has like athlete dreams when they're younger. And but after devoting my life to so many things, I decided, I felt like I didn't want to go to college yet. I felt like I had to explore more of who I am. And so I decided to go to a post grad academy in Arizona. And I lived there. I lived in a house. I lived for 6, 7 months in a house of 15 people.
Uh,
Could you imagine? You could imagine how that
uh,
was. Yeah, yeah. And so what happened is in this time period, I was coming to the conclusion that basketball is going to be over. And when you spend your whole life doing something, and it comes to an end, you're left to think, okay, who are you now?
that's so
And
true.
this is like this. I was in a dark night, right? And you know, I I spent my life doing something. Now I have to build my life. I have to figure out what I want to do, but I don't know what. So where am I gonna go moving forward? And this caused a lot of anxiety, and it caused a lot of confusion and stress on me. But I thought I was the only one. But then after talking with my peers, we were all going through with it. And there's like a silent dilemma and a silent crisis that happens amongst young people when they hit that transition phase. It's known and felt by all, but never talked about. And when we go throughout our process in life, people always ask you, what's your dream or what do you want to do in life? But there's no space carved out to actually help you come up with that answer. People always want to say, oh, people always want to get the answer of what you want to do or what are your goals. And people, even if you go on like motivational stuff, like it's always like find your passion, find your dream, and then go after it. Well, you can go after a dream, but before you achieve that dream, you need to understand what that dream is.
Right.
And there's no time carved out in the educational system. There's no space being brought up for young people to just stop and think about who they are. It's just you finish high school, you go right into college, you pick a major, and sometimes it's not even the major that you enjoy, or you just kind of choose it because your parents or whatever it is. But there's a lack in the in that transition phase to pause and think. And when I was going through this stress in my gap year, I started to speak about it with my peers. And what first was one-on-one conversations became group discussions. And then these group discussions became workshops. And then these workshops became a framework. And that's kind of how Find Your Mission started. And having these conversations to pause and think about what it is that you want to do.
Wow, that's powerful. That's actually so cool because the fact that you mentioned that it's like it's felt by all, but not talked by everyone. It's like like it hits so close to home because literally today at work that I was at earlier, there's this new girl who maybe like joined like a week and a half ago or something, and so forth. And so she was like talking a little speech that they made her give as the meeting was starting, and she was like, well, right now, I don't know what I want to do. I'm just kind of like trudging along, right? She just recently graduated college and everything. She's like, I really don't know what I want to do, but I'm here at this job. It's been fun learning the skills that I'm learning at this job. But we'll see what I end up going forward. And just like you said, where it's like, hey, you know, sometimes you don't know what it even is. And like having literally heard someone say that today, like it makes it so relatable to what you're saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And yeah, and the thing is, that's something that, like, I would say that people, when I talk to adults about it, they're like, "Oh, you're young, you'll figure it out." But do you really? How can you figure it out if you don't actually take out time to just pause and think about what you want to do? And I feel a lot right now, like our generation struggles with spending time alone. And actually spending time alone can often be ridiculed. So it's kind of like, there's this kind of this influence to, go out there, and there's like overstimulation, distraction. I mean, we live in a time where we have access to the most resources, like, that you can fulfill your mission. I mean, you have an expert at the tip of your fingertips, and now with AI,
Yeah. Yep.
it's literally never been easier to fulfill your dream, but it's never been harder to find it because
So
of
true.
all the distractions,
So much
right?
noise. Yeah, hey, you could go
All that
here
stuff.
and this, you could do that, and there's like, okay, what do I even do? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, no. So that's something that, we're providing. We're providing that space. So kids don't have to go through this dark night alone.
Beautiful stuff, man. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the following. I know in the forum as you were filling it out, something that really, really caught my eye. You mentioned something really powerful about like that, the great mental warfare, if you remember that. And would you want
Yes.
to break down what that means and why that's such a critical issue for young people today?
Yeah. So the great mental warfare is the challenge that Find Your Mission and the DMD network are here to solve. So what is it, right? And I'm gonna give you the stats, and then I'm gonna give you the real.
Let's
Okay.
go.
So the first thing, right now, our generation is in a crisis. Anxiety, depression, and loneliness is at an all time high. More than half of young adults believe they lack meaning and purpose in their lives, right? And if you talk to anyone, and you can see it, that a lot of young people are struggling to find themselves, to figure out what they want to do. Now, the root cause of this, that I believe is what upholds this great mental warfare, is the lack of self-awareness. The lack of self-awareness means the ability to see, to understand yourself clearly, your emotions, and the type of impact you want to have on the world. These, like, I say, when it comes to work with young people, like, the key factor to a lot of solving a lot of your problems is having that north star, right? Finding and understanding who you are and what you want to do. It's like your mission is kind of like the navigation system within your life, right? So, and a lot of times when it comes to the great mental warfare of the things that we're talking about, like, people not knowing themselves is kind of what's causing this. I mean, when I go around and around my college campus, and just basic conversation. I don't know if you've been to college. Like, have you been to college or?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I graduated a while back. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So the first thing that they ask you is what's your name, and then what's your major, right? Like,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
in the first meeting, like when you first go to college, it's like,
yeah.
oh, it's
That
like, oh,
orientation class or whatever.
orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, yeah. It's always your name, what's your major, but then there's a third question I always add to that. I was like, I ask, what do you want to do with your major? Almost none can answer that question.
Wow.
And this is actually backed up by research. Well, the Harvard Business Review posted an article that says, while 95% of people believe they're self-aware, only 10% actually are. And if you actually look into this, they believe that self-awareness is going to become the new superpower of this century, right? Because people who are self-aware, people who know themselves more, have better relationships. They're more creative. They're better decision makers. They're better problem solvers. They have more confidence, and it's because they know who they are. So for it's really hard life to get a grip on you when you have that thing that holds you still. When you have that mission, you have that target. And, if you don't have something to stand for, then you will fall for anything. You'll get distracted by anything.
So true.
I like working with young people. Like, a big thing that I see is re- trying to find good relationships. Well, you have to ask yourself, what environments are you actually placing yourself in? Are
Hmm.
you in an environment that aligns with your values, or an environment that does not, that is disempowering? But sometimes we find ourselves in the environments that are not so good. So we have to ask ourselves, why aren't we in those positive environments. Well, do you know what even those positive environments are? Do you know what your mission is? And it's like the mission is kind of like the tipping point to starting and having a good life.
Now, I love how you said that because it's so true. There's another guy that I follow. Like talks about like goals, and especially more towards in that business entrepreneurship aspect. And he's like, hey, if you have a specific goal, let's say in business, for example, does this action, decision, etc., get you closer to your goals or not? If it does, do it, and if it doesn't, then why are you doing it? Kind of relates to what you're saying, like, hey, are you in the right environment to get you where you want to go, or are you in a bad environment or hanging out with the bad, let's say, a bad crowd, or maybe people that aren't as you were saying, self-aware of where they want to go in life, and like, hey, maybe that's why you haven't gone to where you want to go. So I think that's so powerful how people say it in different aspects, but it boils down to the same, in a sense, concept or point of view, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. Like the thing is like if you wanna achieve your dreams, the first step is actually identifying what that dream is. And sometimes we jump the gun on that. Like we jump the gun on chasing our dreams without having that strong foundation and brainstorming and mapping our own minds as to what it is that I like, what is it that I love to do, what brings me the most excitement, and how can I actually build that with my strengths.
Yeah, for
So
so true.
yeah, yeah. But to answer the question, I feel like I didn't really tackle that well. But to answer like what is the great mental warfare is just the amount of distraction, overstimulation, and lack of meaning and purpose within young people. And I feel like this generation is searching for all the right things. This generation is searching for all the right things, just not in the right places.
Yes.
And I think that, to the first step to actually getting to those right places is identifying what are those places that you want to be in. And that comes with knowing your mission.
And you kind of touched about it, but kind of building upon it more. Like you mentioned that Harvard research where it's like only maybe like 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware. And like, and you kind of touched on it a little bit as you were talking about the great mental warfare, but why do you think that gap exists? And like, how does that lack of awareness affect someone's path in life? And I know you touched upon it a little bit, but
Mhm.
feel free to elaborate a little bit more on it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I answered it too quickly, but that's a good question. So the thing is, when I work with young people, and even though I'm pointing out all these things, like I never want to blame the young person. And you can never, like, when it comes to this crisis, you cannot blame the young adult. Why? Because there's no time carved out in the educational system to pause and think.
Right.
They're always asking you, what is it that you want to do or what major do you want? But have they ever asked you, what do you enjoy? What do you love to do? Or, what's a dream that you have? Like, why aren't those questions being asked? And it's because, and even on social media, the way our society is wired today, we're creating consumers. So, it's like everything we do as a society is built for you to consume and for you not to think. It's like how did this computer, the iPad, it's thinking for you, right? And there has to be a way that for us to rewire that as a society, for us to start asking more questions and actually ask ourselves, is the thing that I'm consuming really like helping my life? Or how do I like learn to understand myself first? And it's just that there's just no gap, there's no like self-reflection in educational system. And I would say that's the reason why there's no self-awareness, because everything in the education system is like memorize and take this information, but it's never in the perspective of the student. What is it that I want to learn? What is it that I want to?
And let me ask you this. This is just like a kind of like a on the fly question that just came to my mind. Like you were talking about like with social media, like and consumerism, like consuming, what are you consuming? Would you also think with all, especially social media, because of, let's say, for lack of a better way to describe it, these, let's say, gurus or whatever you want to call them, like selling a lifestyle that's probably not even real, with like the cars or this and that, or even from the girls, from like a female perspective, maybe like the beauty, the fashion, from a guy standpoint, maybe like the cars, the lifestyle, the travel, etc. That people like are comparing themselves to that, and like kind of, let's say, getting robbed of what they truly enjoy just because like they're feeding themselves off of that social media content versus possibly like, hey, you know what, like that's all noise, like you were saying, like, hey, you know, that's not the actual thing. And probably another reason why they, let's say, maybe have some lack of self-awareness because they're just like, oh yeah, I want to live that lifestyle or something versus doing something within themselves. Hopefully that question makes kind of sense, if you know what I'm
Okay,
trying to
so
ask.
I get where you're going, and I get where you're
Yeah.
going, and I have a couple of things that I want to say about that because I do agree. When it comes to that, the lifestyle, I would say, of course, like social media is not like 100% real and authentic. So I would say that's the first thing. Like if you're a young person and you listen to this, like don't compare yourself to others, of course. Now the thing is, the issue that I have with some of these things and the influence of social media is that what we're consuming or what is being brought to us, it's almost like we're being sold a dream and we're buying into it. So a lot of young people today, they have a very narrow-minded idea of what success is. So it's similar to the kind of like athletes, like like growing up, if a lot of young people wanna become Division 1 players, right? Everyone wants to go D1, but how many people actually make it?
Yeah.
Less than 1%, right? And when it comes to like the social media and when it comes to other things that you're talking about, is that a lot of people are buying into a lifestyle or buying into a dream that is not even theirs. Like this funny story, but when I when I was in college and in my experience working with young people, I would ask them, okay, what is it that you want to do? What is it your dream? And usually, like I saw a lot how I would ask that same question to 10, 20, 30 people, and it would be the same answers. So how come is it that these 20, 30, or 50 young kids are telling me that they want the same dream? Why are they saying that? Because they're consuming the same thing. So if there's like a trend of a lifestyle, that's what we're consuming, so that's what we want to become. And it's a trap. It's the same thing with athletes. Like a lot of every young person, when I even in my community, I ask them, all these young kids, what do you want to be grow up? I want to be a Division 1 athlete. And what if that doesn't work out? That I don't know. Right. So and it's kind of like in that way, like sometimes we have to really ask ourselves, is the dream that I have really mine? Or is it an influence from society? Or is it an influence from your parents? Right? Like really extract yourself, like write down what you want and ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is this coming from my own experience? Is this coming from my emotions? Or is it coming from what I'm consuming? I don't know if that answers the
No,
question.
that's a powerful, powerful statement that you said. Like, hey, is this actually like my dream, or is this because of someone else's dream or what I consuming? That's actually super real. Or like you said, the parents' dream. Because how many people fall into the, let's say, the trap, for lack of a better word, of like, yeah, I want to do this, but maybe it's because of some, their parents are like, hey, you should do this, but maybe it was never really something there. And I could, people come to mind that fall under that circumstance actually. So it's crazy you, it's super cool that you hit the nail on the head, I would say, because that's so true of how many youths would, like you said, they're wanting a dream that's not theirs, but they think is theirs just because of everything they're consuming. And that's crazy how that works. That, you know, kind of,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say sad, but more like, damn, like that's a little red flag for, you know, even future parents to be aware of for their kids as how they're raising them up or things of that sort. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I think that, what we have to do, like as individuals, is we have to learn how to separate. Who are we? What are our experience? What are our emotions? And what is it that we're consuming or is being influenced on us? But yeah, I definitely see that a lot. Like, and I wish I had the numbers for research, but there's research that shows, I think it's like 50 or 48% that are influenced by their parents on what they want. And you see that a lot because again, if you don't know your dream, you'll end up living someone else's. And
Hmm.
that goes back to not having that anchor when you don't know your mission. So if you don't know what you want to do, someone will tell you what to do.
And the thing is, other people, maybe not even to harm you or for bad, but sometimes they'll portray their insecurities or doubt onto you or things. And then that also affects what you want to do in life. It's like, oh no, I wanted to do this, but they told me that for it doesn't pay as good, or it's not a good job, or this and that, and then it switches then where maybe, hey, you know what, it could have been something really good for you, maybe that was the path for you, but you got
Mhm.
influence from others and so forth. So we could go into a big rabbit hole there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. There's like a bunch.
there's a lot of powerful stuff there for sure. But also, let me ask you the following here, Daniel. Like something that also really caught my eye there that you were mentioning back when the in the forum there is like from then to now, and you've mentioned how you run over like 250 plus workshops, reached over like 600 plus students. I'm pretty sure those numbers have been changed since then to now in like the past few months. What would you say with all those different workshops, reaching all those different students and so forth? What would you say could be like one breakthrough moment or transformation you witnessed that like really like stuck with you?
Okay, so yeah, yeah. So I would say that, from my experience, working with young people. So actually those 60 workshops, or it was like 450, those are those last 2 months in the spring. In total, we've been able to facilitate more than 200 workshops and reach like over 1,000 students. And yeah, yeah. But I would say that the breakthrough moment is seeing the kids have those aha moments. So what is an aha moment? Is like an aha moment is like kind of when it clicks, when everything comes together. The thing is that people, like, when it comes to finding your mission, we need to, like, what I see that is that everyone has a gift or everyone has a compass within them. It's just a matter of becoming aware of it. And that comes with the right questions, with the right prompts. But like a lot of young people, they kind of feel it inside. They just need to sit down with themselves, write it down, and have that space to actually explore. And you see a huge shift within young people when they don't know, or when they do know now, or when they kind of have that north star. But I would say the biggest breakthrough moments is like, me personally, like, I love when kids in the beginning, they kind of find it cringe or corny. Like, in the beginning, like, "Oh, here comes the self-awareness and the purpose, blah, blah, blah." Like, a lot like, that's a stigma right now that, like, young people have, like, that self-improvement, so all that stuff is, like, cringe stuff, but it's really not. It really should be considered as a need, and that's something we can talk about later on. When it's funny because those kids sometimes when they actually don't take it seriously, the reason why they're not taking it seriously is because maybe they're, like, afraid, or they don't know, like, what's gonna happen. When they do take it seriously and seeing them like have their eyes open and really exploring themselves, that's kind of what does it for me. I remember there was one kid that we were working with, and in the beginning he was like, "What are you passionate about?" And he was like, "Snow bunnies." And I like, and then at the end of it, he was saying that he wants to promote a movement towards mental health and being vulnerable. There's a gift within everyone. There's a gift within everyone. It's just a matter of becoming aware of them. I'm becoming aware of it.
No, 100%. It's true. It's true. And I would also say the following, like building on there on top of what you said, when you're working, with the youth, the kids are instructing them, I would say in a sense your youth to youth mentorship approach is like pretty unique in that case. Why would you say that type of, let's say, peer mentorship being a bit more effective versus like more of that top down model in like today's generation?
Yeah. So that's what makes us unique is the youth to youth approach. That's one element to what makes us unique. And I'd say that young people are more likely to listen when it's someone their age and someone that they can relate to. So, sometimes like the examples that we give and we give our story, they can connect to it because they see themselves in us. And there's actually like a research been done on it that they're like 50% or more than half of young people are likely to listen when it's someone their own age. And it can be the same advice. The message is good, it's just the wrong messenger. I feel like sometimes like our parents and all that, they have good advice. It's just a matter of who's saying it.
That's fair.
And now it's being translated. And and I think that, that uniqueness of sharing that space with a peer allows them to open up and actually see it. And another thing that I would say is that our one of the things that makes the mentorship special, like the youth to youth approach, is that when it's a peer, you're more likely to listen, or you feel more comfortable with the process, knowing that it's someone your own age that already has gone through it. So it kind of builds more confidence about it. Sometimes, like when you talk to an adult, like you feel they tell you to do something, and you feel like, oh, you're telling me to do it, but is it even possible for me? Can I see myself actually achieving that? But when it's like a young person, someone you can relate to, they understand it more and they believe they can actually do it.
Yeah, no, that's true too, because I've been in situations there myself where sometimes, like, maybe someone else had told me something and it didn't really hit me at that moment, especially much younger in life. And like those 18, 19-year olds, my parents would tell me certain things. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, 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 Typical. And then you hear it from someone else kind of like your age, and you're like, and like maybe like for whatever reason you look up to them more, which is crazy. Sometimes as young people, we don't really appreciate our parents. And then it's
Yeah.
like, oh wow, my parents have been telling me that forever. So like, holy crap, maybe they do have maybe there is a good point there or something. Like they have something there, you know what I mean? And then it makes you kind of like reflect on it more, like, oh snap. So I do see what you mean, where people can relate more to like someone within their age versus someone older or something. They kind of get turned off by it. So that's 100%
Yeah.
true.
And I would say like because like self-improvement sometimes, I mean, personal development can seem daunting or reflecting on yourself, but like we try to make it as fun as possible and as engaging as possible. So we kind of just see it, yeah, we're just two young people hanging out, trying to figure out what we want to do. Like that's it. Let's not overcomplicate it. Like let's just dig deep. Come on. And that's kind of how we do it.
Love it, love it. Let me ask you the following. I know you've been, from everything we've been discussing, of course, you've always been on the grind. You've been hustling, as we like to say here, godgymgrind. So you've definitely been on
Mhm.
that grind from launching those programs, building partnerships, scaling impact. What for you could say has been the hardest challenge in this journey so far? Like building this out, creating that impact, and how did you push through it?
The biggest challenge. I would say the biggest challenge has been, it's a good question. I would say the biggest challenge has been building it up. I feel like I feel like, when I think youth to youth is our biggest strength, but also our biggest weakness. What do I mean by that? Because sometimes like, why do I want to listen to a 21-year-old telling me about what I need to do in life? Well, actually, we're experts in this field because we're living it. So sometimes when, these people who like we're young people, we're living it. We see it every day. And when you're starting off, especially when it comes to this space self-improvement, like usually you have to build credentials and you have to build, but we build from our experience. I talk about and what I see, this is not like numbers in a paper. This is things that I feel, I see, and I experience and is around me 24/7. So who better to share that message than to someone who's living it 24/7? And I think that that can be overlooked by adults and professionals because they just see it like, oh, these are just young people, like blah blah. But no, like, we're passionate. We want to do this now and we're ready to go. And I think that some people, when it comes to my experience, being young has been a challenge, but like it's been our strength, but it's also been a weakness. It's just I mean, there's strengths and weaknesses to everything. There's light and dark, yin and yang to everything. So it's about focusing on the good stuff and honing in on that.
I like that. Beautiful. What for you as well then, what has helped you maybe with juggling so many moving parts? What has helped you maybe like kind of like stay grounded and focused when you're juggling so many things? And what has helped you on that too?
Yeah. So honestly, I would say, and I've done this exercise for like a really long time, is just putting your life into categories. Like you have to like you map out when you do an essay or you do assignments, you map out stuff. But are you mapping out your life? Right? And as a young age, I started to categorize. Started to put my life in categories. So category one can be just myself, my connection to spirit and what I love to do, and then maybe category two can be academics. Category three can be sports. Category four can be friends. Like categorize and have a compass for your life, and that actually helps you map out and see things by priority. And you can't just be moving in life without a plan, without a direction. And I think that as young people, that's the thing I tell, like being young is such a huge strength because you have more time now than you'll ever have in your life. What are you using that time for? And when you put your stuff into categories, like I invite people watching this, put your life into categories and then how much time are you investing into each category? And based on these patterns, what does the trajectory of my life look like? How much time are you spending being on the phone and playing with your friends, and how much time are you investing into actually like investing and learning and growing your intellectual capacity within yourself? How much time are you spending trying to figure out what you're trying to do, and how much time are you spending maybe with like girls or basic distractions that people get in today? And actually, start to map out your life and put yourself first. You asked me the question, what allows me to be function is that I put myself first. And that's where it starts.
Nice, nice, nice. Now, let me ask you the following here. Let's say there's a young person, which I know there's going to be many listening to this, but a young person listening to this right now, let's say feels totally lost. What would be the first thing that you'd say to them, and what's their next step?
Okay. The first thing that I would tell them is to plug off. What does that mean? Usually, if a person is feeling lost, there's going to be an influx of no coming in, right? You need to be able to differentiate what is your mind and what is being given to you. So the first thing you got to stop, you know, go on a detox, maybe delete Snapchat, delete Instagram, take a break from your friends, take a break from what you usually do in life, right? And just pause and spend time with yourself. I am the biggest advocate for spending time by yourself with yourself. Take yourself out on dates. Like what are you passionate about? And start to explore that. What is it? If I could do anything in the world, what would I do? And start to do that. Right. And just spending time alone is the first step to start. Right. Sometimes if we're anxious and we're worried to know where we want to go, it's because there's a lot of voices in our head. So the first step that you have to do is to quiet the noise and really get in touch with yourself. And I would say that's the first thing if you're feeling lost, plug out and just listen to yourself.
Beautiful. Love it, man. Awesome. Now, this is a good one. I know this is going to be a little bit of a tricky one, but kind of like, what's the long term? What's like the big vision? Where do you see, find your mission 1 to 3 years from now? I know that's hard because we don't even know what's going to happen a month from now, right? But let's say, where do you see find your mission 1 to 3 years from now? And how can listeners support or be a part of this as well to anyone listening to this podcast, YouTube, etc.?
Yeah, I would say in terms of our goal is we want our goal is to overcome this mental warfare as much as possible. So right now we're working with colleges and high schools and after school programs, and our goal is to be able to have chapters on campuses where these conversations can be a traditional thing that comes every year. So for example, every year, you have to pick a major. Every year you have to do a college essay, but there should be a time carved out in the curriculum every year for you to pause and think about what you want to do and not do it alone, but do it with a structure. And those numbers of awareness and those numbers of anxiety can decrease and the awareness can grow. And what we want to do is we want to be able to expand these spaces to as much campuses and youth organizations as possible. Yeah.
Perfect, man. Perfect. No, I love it. I love it. This has been amazing. I know here time is kind of the essence. I don't want to wrap it up, but it's been such a great. We're gonna have to definitely do a part two on this regards for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
let me ask you the following here, Danny. If there was, let's say, one final words of advice that you can leave the audience with, what would that be for someone who has a passion for helping the youth, guiding them, finding their purpose in life? What would be that final words of advice that you have for the audience?
Hmm. I would say, every young person goes through this process of what I like to call like the dark night. And, a lot of times, when we're going through life, we don't actually take time to stop and think. And, you know, this moment when you're going from high school to college or college to career, there's a lot of confusion and stress that comes with that trying to identify. I want you to understand that I see you, I feel you, and I understand you. And you shouldn't have to go through that alone. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help you overcome that in a way that is structured and it's alone and most importantly understand that this is just a phase and it's not a destination. I've seen how my peers and from my experiences that we never get out of that phase. But that doesn't have to be the story for you. And if you're interested in self-awareness, you're interested in self-discovery and finding passion and helping others find their passion, then you can contact us. Our social medias are, I remember you asking me that question, is at DMD Network on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And then my personal account, you can join our community channel. It's Daniel Miranda. And recently we've put together a fundraiser. So, help everything that we've been doing has been at no cost. Everything that we've been doing, we're doing it with our experience coming out of our pockets. So if you want to help us, if you're a parent, an adult listening to this, and you want to help more young people have this time to reflect and think, then support us, and we would love, and it would mean the world to us. Yeah.
Beautiful. You guys heard that here first on the G3X podcast. Daniel, I'm so happy to have had you on this podcast, man. It was great. You have a beautiful mission. May God keep guiding you and expanding this program beyond what you could even imagine. Only God knows what He has planned for you and this purpose that He's put in your heart. So may you keep making an impact. I know for sure the youth needs it. I remember myself when I was starting in college, even though, yeah, I kind of already had an idea of what I personally liked and wanted to do. How many classmates did I not meet, even in our senior year, actually, where like, I don't know if I even want to do this, but it's just what I end up choosing. I just didn't want to switch because it was too late. So it's like, I know that's something that, it's something like you said that the youth is, let's say, in a sense, suffering through, lacking. And I'm glad there's someone like you that saw that gap and decided to have a passion for it to, in a sense, try to solve that problem, make a difference in the world, man. So truly excited to have you had on this podcast, man. We'll definitely be having another part. You'll be back on this podcast for sure, where we could discuss even more. So again, thank you so much. You guys already heard his socials. That'll be there in the YouTube description, or if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. As we like to say here, godgymgrind. And until the next one, peace out, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you. Really appreciate this. Thank you for those words.